The Exorcist Believer marks the return of the iconic horror franchise under the direction of David Gordon Green, known for his work on the recent Halloween trilogy. Many people, myself included, were hesitant about this legacy sequel due to the history of both the Exorcist franchise and director David Gordon Green. People simply did not have faith in this film. But can this film save the franchise, or did it merely serve to damn it further? Let's talk about it. The Exorcist Believer kicks off with an intriguing first act. The film stars Leslie Odom Jr. in the role of Victor Fielding, a single father raising his daughter Angela in a Georgia suburb after losing his wife in an earthquake in Haiti 13 years earlier. Angela's quiet curiosity about her mother prompts an excursion into the woods with her friend Catherine one day after school in order to do a ritual to try to communicate with her. When the girls don't return home by dinner time, their parents grow concerned and an intense search begins. It's not until 3 harrowing days later that the girls finally return, bearing signs of trauma and no memory of what happened. It's initially thought that the girls are suffering from some sort of psychological issue, yet as the plot unfolds, it becomes chillingly clear that something far more sinister lurks beneath the surface. This sparks a series of events that will lead Victor to revisit past traumas and concepts of faith in a desperate bid to save his daughter. This film follows a much faster route to establishing that the girls are in fact possessed than the original film, but Angela is still subjected to uncomfortable medical tests, and it seems that this is done solely because that's what happened in the first film, which seems to be a recurring theme in the film. Green demonstrates his mastery of mimicking established horror techniques, effectively incorporating several familiar callbacks to the original film. The film's focus is mostly on the drama and making sure that it includes all the familiar narrative elements associated with the original film. The film also doesn't waste time on characterization once the initial father-daughter bond between Angela and Victor is established. Of the 2 possessed girls, only Angela is given any identity pre-possession, and the film throughout is much more focused on Angela and her father. In fact, Victor is really the only character in the film that feels like a fully formed person, and Catherine, along with her parents, feel much more like secondary characters. One of the film's major highlights is the return of Ellen Burstyn in her role as Chris MacNeil. Her presence lends the movie credibility and is a nod to the franchise's legacy, but adds little to the film overall. And while her performance is solid and she does her best with what she has to work with, that speech is bad. And her appearance in the second act marks the descent into mediocrity of the rest of the film. It picks up a little towards the end once the actual exorcism gets underway, but by that time it's too little too late. The film attempts to explore themes of faith and religion in the modern world, but these themes are thinly sketched and fail to fully engage the audience. The movie's central theme of family bonds replacing traditional religious elements lacks depth and development, and even its portrayal of religious diversity is extremely lackluster and still pretty homogeneous, as all of the religious figures are still Christian. The film is full of really excellent performances, but the writing really holds it back. The CGI is horrible, and the dubbed voices of the girls when they are possessed is jarring and seems out of place. There are also too many characters, and hardly any of them have any character development. While the film has its moments, it ultimately falls short of its potential. It lacks a clear sense of direction and fails to establish rules for its supernatural elements. It also struggles to find a consistent tone, oscillating between serious drama and schlocky horror, and the contrast between the two can be jarring and even disorienting. There's also just way too much unnecessary exposition in this movie. And from here on out, I'm going to be going into some spoilers. So if you don't want to hear spoilers, just stop the video now. Chris MacNeil is introduced as an expert on the subject of exorcism with over 50 years experience on the subject, yet she's never performed an exorcism. Of course, in the original film, Chris was merely a witness to the exorcism rather than the one performing it, but you would think in the time since, she would have had at least some experience with an actual exorcism. It seems odd to me that she would spend so much time researching the topic and has never performed one. But I guess it does help to explain why her attempt goes so horribly wrong when she's blinded by being stabbed in both eyes with a cross by Catherine. After this, she's sidelined for the rest of the film. A sort of religious justice league is formed, led by the neighbor Anne, who works as a nurse but was previously trained as a nun. Anne was also the one who brought Chris into the situation because she was familiar with her books that detailed the events of the first film. The theology team is pretty poorly explained and justified, and it's not a very diverse collective of religious figures, as, again, they're all still Christian. There's a priest who doesn't initially participate in the ritual, but later on he becomes involved in a very melodramatic way, and as he's holding his hands on the girls, they begin to turn their heads to look at the priest in an unnatural way, reminiscent of the head turn in the original film. But as they continue to turn their heads, the priest also turns his head until his neck snaps and he dies. It's an interesting scene in how it relates to the film's overall criticism of patriarchy within the Catholic Church. But ultimately, this theme is very surface level and extremely underdeveloped. There's also a recurring theme of having to choose one life over another, both in the backstory where Victor is forced to choose between saving his wife and his unborn daughter when his wife is trapped beneath the rubble after the earthquake in Haiti, and again when the demon is possessing the girls and tells the parents that they must choose one girl to live and one to die. At first, the parents are hesitant to choose, but ultimately, it's Catherine's father who, in a panic, says that he chooses her. After this, there's a scene where Angela vomits out a vortex onto the ceiling, and both girls levitate into the air, then fall, and both flatline. But only Angela revives. This is odd to me because in both situations, Angela is not the one chosen, and yet in both situations, she's the one who survives. When Victor was forced to make a choice, he chose to save his wife, and it was fate and circumstance that conspired to end her life while sparing her unborn child. And of course, Catherine's dad, in a panic, chooses his daughter. Other than the parallels between the two situations, I'm not clear on the implications of that, besides some vague lesson learned message relating to Victor. It relates somehow to Angela being sacrificed and rising again after 3 days, but it's dumb. Now, this is probably the biggest spoiler, so if you think you're okay with spoilers, I mean, that's fine, but this is a big one. Like, if you might not want to know. Like, you might be okay with spoilers, but this one, you might not want to know. Linda Blair's appearance in the film was an extremely exciting surprise. It's a very small moment, but it was probably my favorite of the film. Just, it was really cool seeing both of those characters back together on screen. Now, The Exorcist Believer shows potential at times, but its thinly sketched narrative and reliance on nostalgia work against it. There are too many jump scares, it lacks the atmosphere of the original film, and is trapped between the serious and the silly. While The Exorcist Believer had the potential to revive the iconic franchise with its intriguing start and the return of Ellen Burstyn, it ultimately falls short, shifting its focus away from horror and failing to develop its characters and themes adequately. The film's mixed tone and lack of a clear direction result in a somewhat disappointing viewing experience. While it offers moments of entertainment, it ultimately feels lackluster. It isn't a terrible film, it's well shot and well acted. It's better than most of the franchise, but it isn't the worthy sequel that it was hyped up to be. Alright, well, thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, can you please hit the like button? You can also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be updated whenever I upload a new video. And until next time, keep on creeping on.